This is the Afro Perspective Podcast, the home of over-opinionated young voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Afro Perspective Podcast. My name is Tinashe and I am alongside my co-hosts Anton and Zoya. And on this segment of the podcast, we are going to be discussing free school meals. So Anton, would you like to lead into this conversation, because I know you are very passionate.
No, all it was is obviously big up to Marcus Rashford, and he's doing his thing. He has obviously he's moving forward. This is the idea that children should never be hungry, and that during this time, especially during like half terms, etc., it's important that these children get fed. Yeah, so if your parents get a voucher or whatever to feed these children, especially during quarantine, where, you know, some people are either on 80% of their wage
or have been laid off.
Or think about people that are on 0-hour contracts, for example. So you were earning money, you thought you was the big Don Dada in the yard, you were walking in saying, yeah babes, hold this, and now because you're on a 0-hour contract, you're not getting any money now, you're done.
If you was a DJ, you're not getting no money pull up.
I didn't even want to mention DJ because that punched me in my gut personally. Like the way that I'm feeling right now, like, yo Boris, please open back up the doors. I got kids that I need to feed. Like the presents I need to buy. Christmas is currently cancelled in my house, isn't it? So there's been a lot of backwards and forwards on the idea of the free school meals outside of school. So some people have been like, well, the parents should just work. Like, what's wrong with them? They should be providing for their children. And then the other people have obviously been saying, well, the kids, they need feeding. And I think there's been a big argument about those, you know, the free school meals. And some people kind of feel like people are taking the mick out of the system.
Okay, so first of all, when you say free school meals, who qualifies for it? What's the criteria?
So usually you have to be under a certain financial threshold. So basically, so there's me. If I use myself as an example, although it's me and my wife and she works part-time and I work full-time, I earn too much money for us to qualify for free school meals. So you have to be on a lower income, or if you're like a single parent family, the likelihood is you're probably going to qualify for free school meals, unless you're earning some big bucks.
Okay,
so you're going to...
People that are on the benefit system...
Yeah, they automatically qualify.
Yeah. But at the same time... when you look at the benefit system, when they calculate however much you're gonna get,
I can hear where you go.
They factor in
the fact that holidays in, because you need to.
So that money is already, or I'm assuming it's already supposed to be factored in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And if you're on the benefit system, if you're entitled to, say, housing benefit, if you're entitled to full housing benefit, that's a reflection of your income. If your income's under a certain threshold.
Yeah.
So if that's already factored into your benefits, or if you're working, is the issue here the fact that parents can't afford to, or is it more of an issue about prioritizing?
Yeah, finances. So for example, I saw a post the other day saying Jack round the back of me, who's on benefits, says he can't afford meals, but he's out here he's out here busting up fireworks. Okay. Which I can imagine is very annoying.
And also, I mean, Christmas season is approaching, right? Is Christmas going to be a reflection of how people have been expressing their financial difficulty, or are people going to find money
from somewhere
to feel
social pressure?
Social pressure.
Because I understand that social pressure, and I feel it a little bit. Obviously, not a lot, because I'm not that way inclined, but I understand it a little bit. I think, for me personally, I remember growing up, and I grew up on a poor council estate. My parents were relatively okay in that council estate, but a lot of people around me were very poor. And I remember seeing children during the holidays, and their only meal during the daytime, and I promise you, which it really hurts me, was like they go to the shops and buy like 10p crisps.
Oh gosh.
So when people say to me, oh, you know what, the parents should feed them. Yeah, their parents should feed them. And is it their parents' responsibility to feed them? 100%. But just because it's the parent's responsibility doesn't necessarily mean that the child should go hungry. So the issue it doesn't. Like, I think it's a form of neglect from the parents, and yes, maybe social services should be involved, but there is scenarios where it's missed. And I could give you a million, well, not a million, but I could give you 100 examples of where I've seen that level of neglect in poor communities.
So that's nothing to do with the government, that's to do with parenting.
There was never any argument whether to do with parenting or not. That was the point.
Right, okay, yeah.
So for me, people were arguing about... I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
So I think that in this country, and people can, you can shoot me if you want to, but if you were on benefits, and I know people that are on benefits, full benefits, that means, as you said earlier, those benefits are attributed for you to survive for that year. And providing you haven't got, I don't know what the threshold is for how many kids, because I think they've cut it for a certain amount of children now.
Yeah.
But providing you've got a couple of kids, you should be able to survive on the amount. It's a good country to live in if you get benefits, because there are countries where
coming here for the benefits.
Yeah, there's countries where there are no benefits and you will go hungry.
Yeah.
So you should be able to survive, and if you manage your money properly, then you should be fine.
And you shouldn't be.
Okay, so that's one scenario, and they technically are being negligent and being irresponsible. Here's the other issue. So we're currently in furlough.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's use myself as an example. I'm very lucky that I work for a company that hasn't put me on furlough, because I promise you, I can't afford furlough. So if you take my wage down to 80% of what I earn, because I've got 4 children, yeah, I can't afford furlough. So I would then be one of those people that would need those vouchers to be able to support those children.
Go on. How much does it cost per week to feed a child in terms of school dinners?
Bruh. It's a good question. It's a good question.
Let's be.
I don't know.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Realistic. How much does
Would
it
you reckon
cost?
probably like £2 to £3 per child per day?
Depends.
Anton, a loaf of bread costs less than £1.
No, it doesn't. It costs £1, but okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a peanut butter.
But you can make.
Oh yeah.
You can prep food for a whole week with less than a tenner.
Yep.
Realistically.
So a couple of loaves
In
of bread
terms
and
of
peanut
sandwiches, you can buy a big bag of crisps, especially now that you've got value shops like Lidl, etc. I'm not trying to.
Nutritional value is missing.
Yeah, and I'm not trying. I don't want to sound like I'm sort of putting myself on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Or anything, but I'm just trying to be realistic.
You will be able to make do with that amount of money.
that amount of money.
There's never any argument into it.
Yeah, and more so,
there's also a flaw with the system that we're talking about. If you are then going to give additional money to people that are negligent, because I'm using the negligent people rather than the people that are
which
struggling.
we know that there's always been a culture of people taking advantage of the benefit system,
especially in this country because of the amount of entitlement. Then those said people are not necessarily going to spend that voucher on things that you needed to, which is kind of my problem with the government or whoever's in, allowing for that voucher. That voucher should only be allowed to be spent on food.
Okay, so when I hear people say poverty, what are we talking about when we say poverty in the UK?
In the UK's version of poverty may not be...
It's completely different from other countries.
Yeah, it may be different. Yeah, but we come from a first world country, so children should not be starving.
Because here's the thing, if especially you are entitled or you're entitled to benefits, the system almost doesn't allow for you to be poor unless you let yourself...
Yeah, you've taken too much on.
Let me give you an example. I used to work as a housing officer, and you see, if you hear that somebody's been evicted from their house,
they've been doing the most.
It's because they
should have been
have
they've been doing the most.
They're living.
Yeah, they do the most. It's hard to evict people.
Because it's hard to.
I found this out during housing. Yeah.
You can't do it.
Because you could set it up. You could go to court. It takes 6 months to a year to go to court. And if they say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'll pay a certain amount, £10 a month on top of my rent, I'm good.
You've got to really. Alright, and most of the time, when the council, for example, or these landlords get evictions, is if, for example, you're summoned to court for a court hearing and you just can't bother to turn up.
There is that as well.
So
Yeah.
that's where most of the evictions come from, or it's usually people that might be on drugs, so they're just not.
Yeah. They're not
In-
there
they're
with
not
it.
looking after
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, they're not looking after
So
themselves.
you've got the responsibility aspect
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly. But as an individual,
Yeah.
it's many a time that there's a lot of agencies out there, and I'm not trying to downplay poverty. I'm not trying to downplay or to dismiss people that might be in financial situations, because I totally understand it. I totally understand the importance of financial inclusion, but at the same time, I understand the importance of financial responsibility.
Yeah.
And lack of financial responsibility speaks to a lot of the problems that people have.
Okay, so responsibility wise, as a parent, it is 100% your responsibility to feed your child. That I have never been. No, it's a fact. It's 100. I remember having this debate with somebody on Facebook. Like it's 100% the parents' responsibility. If your child is hungry, in the UK at least, in England, bro, that is 100% your responsibility to fix. I just don't like the ideology of saying because somebody's parent is irresponsible that child should go hungry. I think that's the emotional attachment to that
it's
scenario.
not even that. It's it's more people saying it shouldn't be my problem.
What do you mean?
It shouldn't be my responsibility to
The
feed
government
that child
should feed.
because that parent is irresponsible.
That's bullshit in my opinion. So let me explain to you why. So if my next door neighbor wasn't feeding their child, and I had to walk past that child every day.
No, that's an immediate duty of
This is my point though. This is kind of my point.
We're talking on a macro level.
I understand
Right.
that, but we as people are not macro people. Like it's as an individual, you're going to think. For me particularly, I'm gonna look at scenarios that I've seen. I'm thinking, nah, man, that thing's not right.
Yeah, but what you're not going to do is you're not going to take that on your head to say, yeah, well, so and so's partying out his money, so and so's sniffing out his money, and the kid's hungry, so I'm gonna go feed that kid every day.
I mean, I got call social services.
Yeah. Call social
Class.
You're going to
Yeah, but I
You're not taking direct
You might feed
responsibility.
I may feed the kid though.
Yeah, but you're not gonna make
in the meantime.
in
so.
the meantime until
Yeah.
you know, on an immediate basis.
I agree with you 100%, 100%. But then I suppose we still have to go back to the point where the finances were working and they're not quite working anymore because of the time that we're now currently in. Because this time, let's be honest.
Thing, we're gonna have to pay it back at some
No,
point.
2020 is an unprecedented year.
That word.
Yeah.
Unprecedented.
On 2020, no, bro,
Some
we
things
have
happen.
never in this country, because obviously, you know, like in this country, I have never seen anything like
Okay, yeah.
this.
So on the strength of the current situation, yeah, there is some merit to the idea of providing extra financial assistance to people that may be
Bro, that might be
adversely
me
affected.
soon, but DJ money run out.
However, we're talking about a scheme that's been running way before.
Yeah, I think there is a history
scheme that taxpayers have been.
It's a horrible and it's a horrible two-way thing because there is a history of people and entitlement and believing that they should assume that they're going to be looked after by the system and therefore they deserve this.
Yeah.
And then there's
while
a
disregarding the fact that
Yes.
this is it's like a pot we're all putting into the pot.
Yeah.
So think about the people. Think about the taxpayers that
Yeah,
never
me.
benefit like yourself.
Yeah.
Too much.
Bro, when you think about
still have to pay.
I
The more
earn-
you earn, the more you pay.
Bro.
But
Yeah.
you can
See,
Let me
you
tell
don't see-
pick out
don't
that
get it
pot.
twisted. I understand the other side of the argument because I'm stuck in the middle. So I earn too much to claim any single benefit. I've got 4 children.
I've never claimed a single
Yeah.
benefit in my life.
Well, good for you. But my point is, I earn too much. Like I can't get anything. I can't get any sort of benefit whatsoever. But I'm not rich enough to, to actually manage to get over that scenario, that threshold. So I totally get it. So I think for me, it's more for those people than for people that are on full benefits. If you're on full benefits, then technically you should be okay. Unless people are going to tell me otherwise.
So can we agree that I think we can agree that school meals are definitely needed. The government.
I think Marcus Rashford's argument was the one meal a day, the one hot meal that you was always going to get regardless. So if you went to school and you was going to get that hot meal, then that was going to set you up for the day. Like, and I understand that because of some of the things that I've seen.
Do you think it's a given or it's a sort of necessity?
I think every child should be fed. I think it's as simple as that.
We're talking about the at the back of the taxpayer, at the back of the government.
Fam, if they told me tomorrow the tax was going to raise by another % and that ensured that every child was going to be fed, I wouldn't care. Like I literally, just because of how I am, I wouldn't care. If they could ensure that money, my issue is, can you? I know, and that's why there's an argument. yeah. If they could ensure that, if they said, you know what, we're going to raise income tax from whatever % to 21%, and we're going to ensure that every single one of those children that need to be fed are going to be fed, I'd sleep soundly at night. I'd have no issue, because regardless of whether their parents were on drugs or if they were stuck in a situation or if they were just financially dependent at that time, my issue is that obviously people are always going to take the mick. There's no such thing as a perfect system, so that's why that leads to the argument of people saying, what do you mean they don't need the money? They've got the money.
I think there's definitely people out there that need help. There's definitely people out there that could do with financial inclusion and assistance.
Help me.
But at the same time, it doesn't make it easier when there's people that can afford to feed their kids.
So people are abusing.
But it's abusing the system.
I don't think it's a few people as well. I think there's a lot of people abusing.
There's a lot of people that would abuse the system. There's a lot of people that will probably take the meals and dash them in the bin, but just for the sake of taking them, just because we can, because the system.
That's a culture. Do you know what that is? That's the culture.
Yeah, and that's
the issue. It's the culture of the country.
Of it. And I think it almost creates this sense of entitlement that doesn't empathize with other people that might not necessarily be entitled to what you're entitled to, because they're doing better financially,
but they're actually in a worse scenario.
They are in a worse scenario.
And that's the problem with this country. Like, and that's why you got to think, a lot of people that are in my position, not me because of where I came from, but a lot of people that are in my position are angry at what they're seeing. So they're seeing, okay, so not only are they getting benefits, they're then now getting an extra voucher. But I'm having to bust my ass at work, and my wife's having to bust her ass at work, and we're struggling to feed her. You know what I mean? And it's them ones.
Do you agree with the narrative that or the narrative in presidents that this whole free school meal vouchers might kind of set in terms of entitlement and dependency on the system, or do you think?
Well, I'll let you finish.
Do you think it's?
I think the entitlement's already there, unfortunately, and I think certain people will just jump on that bandwagon regardless, because they feel that, well, it's there, so I'm going to take it. And that's it's a horrible thing, and I don't know how you can get away with that, but at the same time, I know that some people benefit from that scenario that generally need it, and I'd rather they still benefit than irrespective of if people are taking the piss. That's my standpoint.
Is it a low amount of people that are taking the piss?
Nah, it won't be. It'll be
okay.
I don't know if it's equal or not, but I know that there'll be a significant amount of people that will be taking the piss.
Here's the thing. When we look at the government's budget, and we look at how they spend and how they prioritize their money, and some of the things that the government spends their money on, this on the list of priorities should be further up.
Yeah.
Right.
Essentially, we shouldn't even be having a debate about this.
Not in the 5th or 6th richest country in the world.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? When you consider some of the investments and some of the things that the government spends money on, this should.
Wait, you mean like the track and trace scheme?
Yeah. And with that said.
Part 2 is ended.
That was the end of part 2.
This is the Afro Perspective Podcast, the home of over-opinionated young voices. This is the Afro Perspective Podcast, the home of over-opinionated young voices.